Good afternoon, and welcome to the Wednesday afternoon conference call with Trusts Unlimited. This is Jim George speaking. I'm the non-attorney spokesman and facilitator for Trusts Unlimited, and I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call, particularly those of you calling in for the first time and those who will be listening to the replay over the next 24 to 48 hours. This is going to be a little different call today. There is a lot going on. It's coming at us from a lot of different directions, and so I'm just going to kind of meander today, share with you my thoughts, talk about where we are, where I think I'm going. I'm going to be addressing two issues. One, of course, is the situation in Iraq and the reinstitution of their currency. And second, very briefly, I want to touch on the elections in the United States because I do think that they're going to have an effect, certainly short-term and possibly long-term with regard to the currencies and a lot of other things that are going on. So let's go ahead and start and talk a little bit about Iraq. First, by way of disclaimer, Trusts Unlimited is not the purveyor of the dinar and these other currencies. We're not advocating either the sale or purchase of these currencies, but as rather substantial currency holders ourselves, we want to share with you the information we believe to be most relevant. Of course, the most important piece of information would be the window for the potential reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar. I continue to believe that could happen at any time, but in my opinion, we're talking about a transitional reinstatement in country, and I'll explain what I mean by that. First, there are the detractors, and there always have been, that say that the dinar can't or won't revalue anytime soon. There's basically three arguments that they make. The first argument is the money supply argument. There's just too much dinar out there, so they can't revalue. I disagree with this argument because the revaluation of the dinar necessarily means the substantial reduction in the amount of dinar in circulation. The deletion of the zeros, at least in country, was in fact a collection of the zeros. So of the 3-0 provisional currency that was in play, a functional currency in country in Iraq has been collected. It's not on the street. And what remains will be substantially reduced. So, for example, if an Iraqi citizen has a 25,000 dinar note or a 10,000 dinar note, they are now holding or will be holding a 25 dinar note or a 10 dinar note. So they've substantially reduced the money supply. Then there is the substantial amount of the 3-0 provisional currency which is outside of the country. Well, let's take the United States, for example. When you go to the bank to do your exchange, you will get, and let's use a whole low number, let's say hypothetically you get $3 for each of your dinar. All right, well, we have 10 million dinarians, and let's say they have an average of 2 million dinar. Well, that's 10 million times 2 million times $3. So if there's going to be an inflationary increase in the money supply, it's going to be in the United States, not Iraq, because the United States is going to turn around and give that currency back to Iraq, and it will then be based on what the Iraqi dinar would be based on in country. So I don't see the money supply argument as being really substantial or even legitimate. The second issue is economic growth. They can't reinstitute the currency without economic growth. Well, you could turn the argument around and say, no, there won't be genuine economic growth without the reinstitution of their currency. And, of course, we are seeing a substantial amount of economic growth. The last argument is they can't reinstitute the currency because it'll affect the calculation for the budget. Well, whether they pass the budget or shortly thereafter. Well, my argument would be that they didn't have a problem going from 1190 to 1450. So why would they have a problem going from 1450 back to 1190? What I anticipate happening, and it can happen over a relatively short period of time, is going from 1450 back to 1190, going to a reinstitution rate of maybe 85 cents per dinar, quickly moving to 1-to-1 or a slight premium over the dinar rate, and then revaluing globally. So that's the way I see that happening. And I could certainly see that happening before January. It might be held up into January just to coalesce, to dovetail with the new budget. But I could, in my view, it makes more sense to do it before the passage of the budget. But even if it's held into January, we're only talking 6 or 7 weeks there. Now, why do I think the dinar can begin the process of reinstitution at any time? Well, let's look at the boxes that needed to be checked in order for this to occur. First, the formation of a new government. Check. Parliament's support for the new Sudanese government. Check. Seating of the cabinet and the ministers. Check. Substantial and sufficient reserves to back the dinar. Well, now it's estimated that the CBI will be holding nearly $2 billion USD for the end of the year, and Iraq has purchased additional gold reserves, bringing them up to 135 tons. So right there, they have the backing they need as they go through the process of reinstituting their own currency. Box checked. Economic growth. One of the best growth numbers they've had in decades, and certainly outgrowing the United States. Box checked. And then I've mentioned this before, the banking and trade agreements. The banking and trade agreements can't be done with the hope that the Iraqi economy will grow. It's done with the assumption and expectation that the growth will be there. Now, lastly, both the IMF and the World Bank have publicly encouraged Iraq to proceed with the reinstitution and revaluation of their currency. This is in recognition of the progress that needed to be made in order for us to get to this point. But secondly, all of the international agencies are anxious for these various currencies in a program rate to reinstate, because by so doing, they will no longer be pegged to the U.S. dollar, but will be, in fact, pegged to the IMF basket of currencies. Now, regarding the United States election, I just want to briefly comment on the midterms. It seems that we are once again embroiled in a number of quote-unquote anomalies in the very same swing states. I'm talking about Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. In my opinion, and this is just my opinion, this is what I think is happening. I think that the left has concluded that they can't hold the House, and to try to pull any shenanigans would simply be transparent at this point in time. However, if they can hold the Senate, even if it's just 50-50, and retain the status quo, that substantially reduces the possibility of reversing some of these policies that have been so detrimental to the United States from the standpoint of most Americans. So that's where we seem to be right now. However, irrespective of how the midterm elections go, from now until the seating of the new Congress, a lot of things the Democrats can do, because they're still going to hold the leverage of power. Now, I know they're going to be a quote-unquote lame duck session, but they don't care. They're going to do what they want to do to the extent that they can. And the reason I'm bringing this up is one of my concerns, aside from the fact that they're probably going to try to eliminate the filibuster in the Senate. But even if they eliminate the filibuster, if the Republicans regain the Senate, they can reverse that. But if they remain at 50-50, they can remove the filibuster, and they, in essence, would be creating a social democracy, not a republic. The other issue is the institution of the central bank digital currency, and that could be a problem. In anticipation of that, Trust Unlimited, we're amending the trust program, or at least how we're marketing the trust. For the last decade, we have offered our family asset protection trust package to Dinarians, primarily because most Dinarians are average middle-class, hardworking people who for the first time in their lives will be forced with the daunting task of managing a substantial amount of wealth. And that still remains the case. However, we have to add on top of that all of the problems that are being created for all American citizens. In the last 2 years, we have essentially devolved into a high surveillance, high tax, high inflationary nation, and we're on the verge of a central bank digital currency, which is, in my view, absolute control of our purchasing and many of the decisions we make in our lives. So our turnkey program is something that is important for all Americans, particularly Dinarians, but for all Americans. It's a two-phased program. Phase 1 is pre-RV, Phase 2 is post-RV. Pre-RV involves the establishment of our Family Asset Protection Trust package. Post-RV involves all of the product, services, and professional referrals that will be made available to you after the revaluation of the dinar and some of these other currencies. But this Family Asset Protection Trust package, in my opinion, is going to be an indispensable tool to protect both your privacy and your wealth from the attempts of the federal government basically to rob you of both. The saying is that in order to establish an authoritarian government, you need to destroy the middle class. And you destroy the middle class by squeezing it between taxation and inflation. And that's exactly what we have. We have inflation bordering on hyperinflation, and now we have 87,000 new IRS agents that are going to be deployed. They certainly aren't needed for the 750 billionaires in the United States. They're needed to harass and harangue, in my opinion, average middle-class citizens. So I'm going to touch on the benefits of our Family Asset Protection Trust package from the perspective of both the Dinarian and the American citizen, because these are the benefits that are only available to individuals that have exercised their Fourth Amendment right by establishing their Family Asset Protection Trust package. I want to read for you briefly the Fourth Amendment. Quote, "The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons and the things to be seized." Very simply, by establishing a trust and by putting your assets in the trust, whether it's a civil suit, whether it's an IRS audit, even if it's a criminal investigation, it's very difficult to ascertain what an individual actually possesses without going to a court and showing cause. And in order to do that, you're going to have to be established. You're going to have to establish in that court that you believe a crime has been committed, or that some individual, through a civil proceeding, has suffered a loss due to some fraudulent activity. That's a very high bar, and this is why we've established trusts. Now, unlike things like LLCs, sub-S corporations, and limited family partnerships, those entities are statutory, regulated state by state. They have to file. They have to provide the information. That is not the case with trusts. These are private entities. The assets within them are sealed. Individuals do not have that information, not because you're trying to do anything of a nefarious nature, but because you're exercising your right to privacy. And that's, in essence, what's at stake here. These trusts do not have to be registered federally, on a state basis, or locally. These trusts are settled law. They've been part of Western law for thousands of years. Even the Caesars of Rome used trust to protect their wealth from the Senate. Royalty in Europe utilized these trusts in order to protect their wealth as well. These trusts were even utilized in the United States through the land grants that were given from the various countries to the colonies in order to protect their wealth as well. So these trusts have a long history. This is black letter law. These protections are available to anyone that understands their need for establishing these trusts. And let's walk through some of these benefits. First, by establishing this trust, you've protected your right to privacy. That means the assets within this trust are sealed. General public will have no knowledge of your net worth or your actual holdings. Now, whether you're a person of substantial wealth today, you're a middle-class individual that just wants to keep your wealth known only to yourself, or you're someone that has currencies or some other asset that you think is going to appreciate substantially, the statistics are individuals with a net worth of $1 million or more, 1 in 4 will probably be sued during their lifetime by somebody for some reason. And approximately 40% of these lawsuits will be frivolous lawsuits, meaning that these individuals are just trying to shake you down for a couple of bucks. Well, all those lawsuits go away by establishing a trust because it makes it extremely expensive and extremely time-consuming to pursue civil litigation. Second, these trusts allow you to avoid personal IRS scrutiny. The assets are within the trust, then most of the taxable events will occur within the trust, certainly with the currencies. If your currencies are in trust, you'll transfer the taxable event to the trust. That makes it virtually impossible for the IRS to do a 6-year audit, and any audits that do exist can be taken care of rather quickly. Then there's the issue of gifting. Individuals like to gift currencies. By gifting through the trust, not only will you avoid the federal gift tax, but you will have control of the proceeds. And this is important in situations where you're gifting to individuals that you're a little hesitant to give them a substantial amount of wealth. But this is also a way, whether you're a person that has currencies or not, to gift assets to individuals during their lifetime, yet control that asset. As an example, you want to allow someone to live in a home. You can gift them the right to live in that home during their lifetime to avoid the federal gift tax. You can then gift them that home when you pass away, or the home can revert to the trust if the individual that you gifted to were to die before you were to pass away. Then there's the issue of probate and the federal estate tax. If your estate goes through probate, that ordinarily can take anywhere from 6 to 18 months, but I know of cases that have gone on for decades. Then there's the federal estate tax, the tax that the federal government can assess in order for an estate to pass to heirs. Under current law, the federal estate tax can be as much as 65% of the estate. However, if your wealth is housed in our Family Asset Protection Trust, there will be no probate and there will be no federal estate tax. And then for those of you that have currencies, or even those that have substantial amount of wealth, by utilizing this package and segregating all of your various assets into the different sub-trusts, you'll avoid losing your estate or losing a substantial award, civil award, from future bad acts. That's because this trust allows limited payments in cases where there's civil litigation. For example, if you're in a car accident, the car in question is owned by one of your sub-trusts. All of your other assets are owned by other sub-trusts, which under the law are separate legal entities or persons. So a person suing you, for example, as a result of a car accident would only be eligible or able to recover whatever's in that one trust housing the car and the car insurance policy. Again, all of your other assets are safely protected in other sub-trusts. So for all of these reasons, whether you're a Dinarian or whether you're simply an American citizen that wants to exercise their right to privacy and protect their wealth from litigation, the Family Asset Protection Trust is the only ironclad way that that can be done. Lastly, and in closing, if I take a general view, what we're really witnessing is the demise of the Western Central Bank system and the United States dollar globally. One of the examples of this has been the formation of the BRICS nations. Now, the BRICS nations are a half dozen nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Rather than utilizing the U.S. dollar as their reserve currencies, they're utilizing their own currencies. They've created basically a bilateral monetary relationship that excludes the U.S. dollar. In addition, the BRICS nations have now invited 4 additional nations to join the BRICS nations. So what we're seeing is a move away from the U.S. dollar and the Western Central Bank. The digital currency is their way to try to retain the wealth that they're losing as the result of losing their status globally. And this is why we would utilize these trusts. It might be necessary for us to move outside of the central bank system. And the way to do that is not only through the establishment of our Family Asset Protection Trust, but possibly by creating some offshore entities as well. But the way we can move out of the central bank system is to purchase precious metals, to utilize cryptos, to utilize currencies other than the U.S. dollar, or clone mutual funds. Then there's real estate investment trust, the purchase in real estate, and the offshore ownership of these various assets. I know this sounds technical, but by establishing your trust, once these currencies revalue, then we can discuss with you all of these other options that exist should we be looking at a central bank digital currency. I hope it doesn't happen, but I'm very nervous about what the outgoing Congress is going to do during its lame duck session. And as I said, my 2 concerns are removing the filibuster in the Senate and instituting the central bank digital currency. And lastly, the way to mitigate against all of that is to establish your Family Asset Protection Trust package, whether you are an individual that has dinar or whether you're an individual that simply wants to protect their wealth. Now, if they do create a central bank digital currency, we can't avoid the fact that dividends and interest, of course, will flow through banks and be exposed to the central bank digital currency. But what we can do, as I'm suggesting, is to make sure that our principal is locked into assets which are not involved at all with the United States dollar and currencies that are digital in nature. Now, if the things we've discussed here are of interest, I strongly suggest you contact us to get our no-obligation initial package. It has a lot of information about us, about trusts, about the revaluation of the dinar, and these other rights that we've discussed. The package does contain everything you need if you wish to proceed, but I suggest you review the package, contact us by phone or email if you have any questions. We'll be happy to assist you. There will be no consultation fee. Again, if you wish to proceed, everything you need to apply for your Family Asset Protection Trust is enclosed in that initial package. You can go to our website, which is trusts with an S, unlimitedllc.com. Our email address is trusts with an S, unlimitedllc@gmail.com. And our phone service is 307-274-4122. Contact us by phone or email. We'll be happy to send you our initial package. You can review that. Contact us if you have any questions. I suggest you move quickly, not only because of the reinstitution of the dinar, which could happen at any time, pursuant to the glide path that I discussed, but because I believe that the lame duck session of our Congress is going to do everything they can to limit our control of our own wealth. Now, our next call is scheduled for next Wednesday. Certainly, if something of a dramatic nature were to happen between now and then, we'll try to get out an emergency email and schedule an emergency conference call. But failing that, we will be back next Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Thanks so much for listening, everyone, and have a great week. Bye-bye.